what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Footcandle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson. I am a co-founder and co-director of the Footcandle Film Society and the annual Footcandle Film Festival. And with me is Chris Fry, as you may be able to guess, the other co in those co-titles with the Footcandle Film Society, Footcandle Film Festival. Chris, how are you doing?
I am doing well. I'm looking forward to visiting our top films of 2021, kind of putting a bow on it, and looking forward to 2022.
Yeah, so Chris just kind of ruined the surprise there.
Uh-oh.
Yes, that's what today's episode is we will be, in a little bit, we will be reviewing or giving a recap of 2021 as a year of movies, and we'll be talking about our top 5 films of 2021, as well as some other things in there, like our biggest surprise, maybe our biggest disappointment from the year, and then also look a little bit ahead into 2022 as to something that we're anticipating this coming year. But before we do all of that, and that will be happening later in the show, we've got a review to do first. And it is a review that I guess you could say is a long time in the making. It is the review of the latest installment of the Matrix saga. How many years has it been since the last one?
I think I saw something where it was like 14, maybe?
So 14 years since the last installment. One of the Wachowski sisters has come back to make this film. And we'll be talking, of course, as you can probably figure out, The Matrix Resurrection, starring Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss. And then we'll be following it up with all of our best of 2021 recap. So, Chris, are we ready to talk some Matrix?
Let's do it. Let's take the red pill, right? That's the one we're supposed to take.
The red one's the one we're supposed to take to enjoy this movie.
Okay.
Yes, here we go.
Thomas? You seem particularly triggered right now. Can you tell me what happened?
I've had dreams that weren't just dreams.
Am I crazy? We don't use that word in here.
Nothing comforts anxiety like a little nostalgia. This is a line of dialogue from The Matrix Resurrections. While doing press for the new film, director Lana Wachowski has said, and I'll quote here, "My dad died. Then this friend died. Then my mom died. I didn't really know how to process that kind of grief. I hadn't experienced it that closely. You know their lives are going to end, and yet it was still really hard. My brain has always reached into my imagination, and one night I was crying. I couldn't sleep. My brain exploded this whole story, and I couldn't have my mom and dad. Yet suddenly I had Neo and Trinity, arguably the two most important characters in my life. It was immediately comforting to have these two characters alive again, and it's super simple. You can look at it and say, okay, these two people die, and okay, bring these two people back to life, and oh, doesn't that feel good? Yeah, it did. It's that simple. And this is what art does, and that's what stories do. They comfort us." Alan, how did this sequel work for you? And did it come across as art or simply nostalgia for the previous films? And if so, was that okay?
That is a very, very difficult question for me to answer with this film, because I see this film in one of two lenses as I watched it. I really found myself of two minds watching it.
So red pill, blue pill.
A little bit.
Okay.
And honestly, I mean, the film even kind of works format-wise in that arrangement too. There is this film, I think, I'm going to go ahead and say, the first 45 minutes of this film, I am utterly entranced because of the choices that were made of how they're going to present this fourth Matrix movie in relation to the previous trilogy.
Got you.
And I thought it was brilliant. I am ecstatic watching the first 40 minutes of this film.
Okay.
Because, and I don't want to spoil things on it, but just say it takes a very meta approach to the Matrix. It reframes or tries to reframe how you think about the Matrix as an entity, as a commercial franchise, and so forth. And I loved it. I loved what they were exploring. But then the movie decides, no, okay, that was fun for a little while. We kind of messed with your brain a little bit. But no, this is pretty much a Matrix movie, and we're going to finish out the film in that way. Now, so it did explore where I did find myself getting disappointed that the film didn't decide to embrace the, I think, inventiveness that it did in the first part of it. But I will say, I thought even the latter half was a pretty good Matrix movie. It was a pretty good Matrix story. There was a lot of rehashing. There was a lot of nostalgia clips. There's some moments of some groaners of some things that they obviously were, linking back to past movies. But I still found overall they did enough interesting and creative with this installment to make it noteworthy. I will say I enjoyed this one far more than the two sequels to the original Matrix. Did not enjoy it as much as the original Matrix. That's still one of my favorite movies, top 20, 25 films up there. So it's somewhere in that gray area in the middle. But I will say I had a good time with it. I just wish they had taken the conceit and the inventiveness I saw in that first 45 minutes and done more with it throughout the film. That being said, Chris, I'm really anxious to hear your thoughts. What did you think of this?
So I think I'm a little bit of an outlier, I guess, in that the original Matrix, I saw it. I appreciate it for the effects, but a lot of the stuff that was supposed to make you scratch your head or get in deep, I thought was just kind of baloney. But I appreciated the effects and like the surface ideas that were there. But then when they tried to go deeper, it's just like they got convoluted for convoluted's sake. And then the second and third sequel kind of like, well, okay.
Well, yeah, the second, third,
Right.
The second, third movies were just, they took what was, I thought could have been a very, I hate saying the Matrix, a simple idea, because it was a fairly complex idea.
Gotcha.
But they took this concept and said, all right, let's really explore it and dig deep. And it wasn't a concept that I felt like needed to be explored and dug any deeper. That's where I think the two others failed for me. But I think this film actually kind of recognizes that a little bit.
Right.
It's when it leans back into those things later in the film is where I think it loses some points.
And I think you and I are pretty much on the same page. I'll say that I guess where we may diverge a little bit is because of the first 45 minutes and how that's structured. I actually appreciated this more than the first Matrix.
Okay.
Because it was trying to do something. It was topping itself in that one respective kind of a meta level, like you said. And not that the first film does have some meta, like what's real, what's not real, take the pill. But this was like, it was taking it to kind of a little bit more removed. I mean, they mentioned Warner Brothers, the company, at one point.
Yeah.
Without getting too spoilery, but I feel like if you're interested in this movie, you've probably seen it by now because it is on HBO Max as well as in theaters. So that's why I think I am kind of strange in that I like this sequel better. And the fact that, when you go to movies, you kind of think you know what you're expecting. Like you mentioned, this is the fourth film. I rolled that they were even bothering doing it. And the fact that they were able to pull off this first 45 minutes and actually really surprised me. I was like, wow, okay. That made me forgive the rest of the film because, they do kind of fall back into some, traditional Matrix type stuff. But then I began to think about it. In the other movies, the apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic side of things to me always seemed it was kind of boring when they're in the post-apocalyptic side of things because a lot of it's CGI with like the squid things going around everywhere, and it just, I don't know. And I'd already had enough of that in the first few movies. So I think the most interesting parts are the Matrix-y parts.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
And so therefore, I think that's one of the reasons why the first 45 minutes or so, you're kind of immersed, and then we go back to kind of that post-apocalyptic stuff, and then it just kind of derails itself. But I will say, the way they're two I guess they're not cameos, but they're supporting actors, Neil Patrick Harris and Jonathan Groff, the characters they play in this, I thought were really interesting. And the final scene that takes place, I thought was a really nice way of kind of finishing off the franchise, we think, for this fourth movie. I thought it was ultimately satisfying because it, like you say, it started really strong and then it redeemed itself at the end. And some of the things that happened between Jonathan Groff and Neil Patrick Harris were very satisfying.
Yeah.
And if you've seen the trailer or if you've seen the promotional posters and stuff, there are questions about what exactly is going on. And Lawrence Fishburne, spoiler, isn't in this. And I thought and neither is, who's the guy who plays Agent Smith?
Right.
I'm blanking on his name.
I blanked
right
the
now.
name too, but yes, the
Elrond from Lord of the Rings. I
Yes,
can't remember his
right.
name right now. Sorry, dude. But they handle those absences there again in a really awesome way.
Yeah.
So there's, for me,
Hugo Weaving.
Hugo Weaving, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now he won't sue us. It was so much more satisfying and creative than I ever imagined it would be for being a fourth film in a franchise. And actually, I have to say, if we could, give it an award, I don't know that there's been a fourth film in a franchise that's ever managed quite this level of creativity. I mean, I guess you could look at like the Star Wars films, but I'd have to really tear those apart, or like the Marvel films. But like as far as a single, because I don't think Marvel really, because you've got all these different characters and
I
storylines,
don't
so
see it
you'd
the
have to
same
do
way.
you'd have to compare it to, I guess, Star Wars. But still, this really was able to do some things that I just didn't think possible, especially after the third film. You feel like, okay, they've kind of, they kind of made the second and third film and kind of split it into two parts. And, they released, was it less than a year after each other? The way they did.
I think they were back-to-back years on that.
Yeah. So it just, it's like, okay, they are out of ideas. This is it, so to be able to come back for this, and I have to say the reason I included that introduction that I did, because I thought it was a really interesting way, you can see this as just an action movie, or, you can see it as some gymnastics for your not meadow, that's my daughter, meta gymnastics for your brain to do. Or, you can also look at it through the lens that apparently the writer-director was looking at it through, like, ways of dealing with grief. And I thought that was really interesting. And I'll kind of sandwich this in there. Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss stepping back into the roles 14 years later, Neo and Trinity, I felt like it was like they'd never left.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. And I think that's just a testament to, I'm assuming, how much they like playing these characters, otherwise they wouldn't have come back, and how just really comfortable they are doing it. And I was really impressed with that aspect.
Well, the scenes, again, not getting into spoiler, but there are some of the initial scenes when they are together
right.
for the first time in this film were really, I felt like you could just feel the chemistry locking back in pretty easily, even though it's under some very unique situations that they find themselves when they first meet in the film. So, I agree. I agree with you on everything you just said. Thought very inventive. I thought, like you said, the replacement of characters from the original trilogy with different actors done in a way that was extremely creative and inventive. And it kind of, you find yourself guessing through the film kind of what was going to be the case. And then when you did find out, it was very different and unique. All of that was great. I want to throw out some kudos as well. Jessica Henwick playing Bugs, who is like kind of our liaison to this new phase of the Matrix world. And she was great. I thought she was a really, really good character.
And a clever name.
Clever name. Yeah, Bugs. And, but she was great, not only the physicality of the role and the action scenes she did, but even just the moments where she's having to be kind of, the Keanu Reeves Neo's kind of liaison to understanding what's happening now. And it was just great. So she was really, really good.
And the backstory they give her, and it's not labor, but it's just kind of like a point that they mention. You're like, okay, I get that.
Totally get that. Yeah.
So yeah.
You mentioned Jonathan Goff, kind of, again, not going to spoil what role he's playing, but just to say he plays a pretty critical role. And there's a fight sequence between Keanu Reeves and Jonathan Goff, I thought was really great.
Yes.
Kind of this very, very intense, raw fight, and was really well done, well shot, and well choreographed.
Listeners, if you're not familiar with him, you will be familiar with him when I mentioned he's the guy in Mindhunter, and also he
right.
played King George in Hamilton. So you've definitely seen his face around, and
Yeah.
he was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. Where the movie I thought lost some steam for me is kind of in a middle section where we start to dip back into that mythology, and Jada Pinkett Smith, I guess that's
man.
not a spoiler, but she returns, and she was a character from the two sequels that were part of those films I did not enjoy. And
Correct.
unfortunately, this is the part of the film I did not enjoy here either.
Nodding my head with you. on
Yeah,
that.
it was just that part was starting at that moment in the film. I'm starting to find myself saying, here we are back again. We're back in the sequel category, and I'm not happy. But the film does redeem itself, I think, with a really great final action sequence, final kind of, there's some drama involved with the two main characters, and it worked, by the end. What I will say I like about this, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but I love the fact that this ultimately is not really a film or story about Neo. It actually focuses on
true.
another character that I think gets more as of a conclusion as a character and more higher priority in the Matrix universe.
Okay.
I'm looking at you trying to make sure you are on the same page,
I
but
think I know what you're.
there's someone in the last frame of the film that we see alongside Neo that I think
Oh yeah.
this is really their film by the end. I think them having to kind of make a decision and a realization and anyway,
Yeah.
they come out being a much more strong, powerful character than I think even the person we think is going to be the main character of the film. That's just my take on it, but I liked how that ended.
Sure.
I really did. So, the effects in the film, visual effects, I thought were pretty much on par with what we saw like in the original films. Wasn't anything too revolutionary change from those. They take, if you're wondering, they take the concept of the bullet time, from the original and they change it. And it's not a revolutionary change, but it was an interesting change to it. And I like that they kind of referenced that is oh yes, that was a big technology and we're doing something different with it now. And it worked for the most part. And there was nothing here that people are going to be like raving about from a special effects standpoint years from now, like they did with the original Matrix as much.
Right.
But I still think they did a good job with it. And you know what? Let me just mention Keanu Reeves.
Okay.
I think I've gone on record saying that, look, I get it. Keanu Reeves is not the best actor. But when he has a role that fits him really well and he knows how to play it, he's really, really good. This is that role. So this is Keanu Reeves' role. And,
This and John Wick.
yeah, and I could see you could kind of blend a lot between those two characters.
yeah.
There's a lot of the reasons that those two characters work are very similar to each other. And I think right up Keanu's avenue. The movie causes him, I think, to stretch a little bit in some places, and it maybe or may not have worked as much for me, but
Interesting. See, I think it did. There's some
Really?
There's some
Okay.
coffee shop scenes that I found to be really good, and
Yeah.
that may be some of the stretching you're talking about. But it worked for me, maybe because the person he was paired with in that scene was maybe up to the challenge, or was maybe more capable of pulling it off.
be.
But I know it worked well.
okay.
I guess.
All
I'll
right.
say.
Well, good.
Something I want to ask you, if you noticed, and if you didn't, that's fine. But if you did, I wonder just your thoughts on it. Trinity and Neo don't fire guns in this movie.
Yes, I noticed that. Now there is a lot of gunplay,
Oh,
but
yes.
not from the two of them.
Which, we've had a lot of gun violence in movies. The Matrix, the original one, as you mentioned, one of the big things was bullet time and all this, and the sequels had gun violence. I thought it was really interesting that they just did like karate and like force moves type stuff, but they didn't shoot guns. And I thought that, hard to make an action movie where there are no guns involved.
True.
Unless you're making a karate movie.
Well, when I look back on the original Matrix, that is the one element of that film that if I go back and revisit, it's it's somewhat bothersome,
Sure.
the amount of guns and being used. Now, you could argue and say, well, all the gunplay is in the Matrix, and the Matrix is not real, and the people
Right.
that they're shooting and killing are not real people. Well, technically, if you look at the way the story is structured, I mean, they are people, and if you die in the Matrix, you die in the real.
Right.
So there is some of that insinuation. That's always been a little more bothersome. I know it was super cool, the long trench coats and the shooting guns
Right.
in the first movie. Unfortunately, it's taken a life of its own in our
Yeah.
culture, and it's you can look back now and it's very damaging, I think.
I thought it was interesting they mocked the sunglasses.
Yeah,
too.
right. Yeah. So I think this movie, is a little realization of that. I mean, again, there's a lot of guns and there's a lot of firing of guns.
Right.
But the two characters that we're supposed to be following and kind of idolizing, I guess, if you're a fan of the film, don't fire a single one. And I thought that was really creative, the use of their abilities in that final sequence.
Right. And I think for the movie, we've mentioned things we admired about it, and that's something else that I'd heard about going in. I'd heard somebody just mention that, and then I had that awareness as I was watching the film that they bothered to try to do that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay. I was glad they bothered to at least try.
I think it would have been strange to take guns out completely, where all of a sudden you don't see it. Will almost be too obvious that that's what they're
sure.
doing. But I think having our two main characters not wield guns was a statement, and I think it was an acknowledgement of saying we don't have to have our heroes be the gun-touting people to win this thing.
Right.
And so I admired that. I thought that was a good move. Overall, yeah, Matrix Resurrections, I liked a lot. I'm actually kind of anxious to watch it again. Now kind of knowing where the story is going to go, I might be able to kind of hone in on a few things that worked really well or not the next time around. But overall, again, I did love that first 30 to 45 minutes. I thought it was exhilarating. It did let me down midway through the film. It ultimately redeemed itself in the end, I think, with a really well done set piece and nice conclusion. So overall, I'm happy with the film. I'm giving it a very positive review with a couple misgivings. I would have loved it if they could have stuck to that, the premise somehow in that first 30, 45 minutes and just let that roll somehow and make it still an exciting, interesting film. I don't know. I guess trying to think how you would even do it. I don't know how you would do it, but it would have been pretty wild.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it's the difference. I gave the original Matrix. It's probably heresy to a lot. I gave that 3 stars.
Okay.
I gave this 3.5.
Yeah.
So I do like it better. But if, like you're saying, they had been able somehow, which I realize very difficult, especially fourth film in a franchise, to maintain that momentum of the first 45 minutes for the entire runtime of the film, this would probably be a 5-star, because that would have blown my mind.
If you handle it as a deconstruction of the previous trilogy films and a meta commentary on what happened in those films, and that's what was fascinating with what they were doing with this. Again, but they kind of rightfully so to make the way they wrote the story. Yes, you have to abandon that conceit halfway through to make the rest work, but could they have found a way? Could there be a really good story where you just continue that conceit? It would have been really cool. It would have been very, very cool.
Agreed.
Well, that is The Matrix Resurrection. Sounds like Chris and I are both positive on it. I'm maybe a little more positive, but that's only because I like the original so much more and was happy to see this. It restored a little of my faith in what the Matrix film franchise can be. Now, I will say this movie's not doing too hot, like box office
Which
wise.
I'm kind of surprised.
very surprised.
Yeah, because
I think just too much time's passed. I think
be.
it's a little bit more of I think people are maybe, I could see people being a little burnt out on some of the nostalgia cash grabs that have come out in the last year and seeing
nostalgia
this as that.
cash grab for Spider-Man No Way Home, but somehow but that has the whole Marvel universe behind it. So
Yeah, that's a whole
but if
different
you're talking
game.
about being burned out,
I take that back. Maybe I'm wrong about that because Ghostbusters actually did better than expected, and it's all nostalgia. That's all that film is. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know what it was. I don't know what the situation is. Of course, being on HBO Max, they don't really release numbers.
Right.
This could be a film that everybody decided to watch on HBO Max instead of going to the theater. I don't know. But whether or not we get more Matrix films, supposedly Lana Wachowski has said that there's no
This
more.
is it.
Like that was it. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I would
sure.
be totally fine with that being a nice revival for one film and leave it at that. So, all right. Well, that is Matrix Resurrections. It is, as we mentioned, still playing in some theaters, but also on HBO Max. I think it's supposed to be on HBO Max for a month after its premiere.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. So you may have it till like the end of January or so. But Chris and I are both saying, yeah, it's worth checking out, especially if you are a fan of the original movies. This is definitely a worthwhile installment, in our opinion, of that franchise. Okay, Chris, this is the fun stuff. We're done with the review.
Got you.
Is that officially us putting a bow on 2021? Like as far as reviews go,
As far
and
as
films
reviews
and
goes,
discussions.
I do believe it is. Yes.
So, with that being said, how about let's do this? We're going to take a quick little break.
Okay.
Come back and we're going to do our best of 2021 best films. Each of us have our top 5 best films of the year. See if there's any overlap at all, or if we're going to be completely unique choices. Then our biggest surprise, our biggest disappointment, and our most anticipated film of 2022. All coming up in just a moment. Stay tuned. This is Foot Candle Films here on themesh.tv.
This podcast is sponsored by Jackson Creative, a custom communication agency located in downtown Hickory, North Carolina, specializing in online content creation. To learn more, visit thejacksoncreative.com. Jackson Creative, we tell your story.
Welcome back to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. Chris Fry and Alan Jackson here with you. We just had our review of The Matrix Resurrections, that being our last review of 2021 films. So now it's time to give our look back and give our top films of the year as we're now in 2022. Chris, we do this every year. We always look back at the past year and we put together our list. It's typically like our top 5 or so films that we like to call attention to. And then we also have a couple other categories we'll go into in a little bit. But let's go ahead and jump right into this. Let's set this up a little bit.
Sure.
You told me off air there's a couple films, and I've got a couple as well, that you had not seen at the time of making this list. So let's go ahead and kind of clear those out in case anybody hears our list and says, oh, why wasn't this film mentioned? And well, this may be because we didn't get to catch every film that came out.
Yeah, it's hard to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So Chris, what are some ones that you did not see at the time of this list?
So all of I'm going to list 3 films, and all of them are foreign films. And so I guess, at the end of the year, you get dumped DVD screeners if you're a critic, which you and I are. And a lot of times you just, like you said, there's just so many films to catch up on. Some fall by the wayside. So for me, they just all happen to be foreign films. Mm-hmm. And they are Petite Maman, which was by Celine Sciamma, who did Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Mm-hmm. Asghar Farhadi's A Hero, which I also wanted to see. And then there was Pedro Almodovar's Parallel Mothers. All 3 of those I've had heard. Unfortunately, I didn't start hearing good things about them until I already had too many movies to catch up on. And I was like, So I really feel like I'll say, and the only one I have caught up with since I made the list, my top 5 list, is Petite Maman. And that was really good.
Okay.
And I'm not going to spoil anything about it. But
would it have made your top 5 if you had kind of calculated it in?
Maybe.
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 Okay.
It would have definitely made my top 10. But
good.
I would have knocked in the top 5 very, very possibly.
Okay.
I liked Portrait of a Lady on Fire, but for her to follow that up with this completely different type of film, just really admirable.
Interesting.
So I don't think it has actually, I guess one of the other reasons is, as well as Parallel Mothers, did festivals and I think was only made like some big cities. So I don't think it's been wide released yet. Either one of those has been wide released yet. So that's probably why the awareness wasn't quite on my radar. So 2022 will probably be able to catch up with these films a lot easier because they'll be wide released.
Well, I will add to that and say that, yes, those that you mentioned, I have not seen as well. The other 2 I'll add to the list, The Lost Daughter. That was the one directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. Mm-hmm. Have not seen. And The Tragedy of Macbeth, the one that's is it Joel Coen that did this one? Mm-hmm. With Denzel Washington.
And his wife, Frances McDormand.
And Frances McDormand, I have not caught up with. So that's 2 that I have to go ahead and give my disclaimer and say I have not seen.
And the good thing about those is Apple Plus has the Macbeth update, and then Netflix, has Lost Daughter now. So
really, you're saying
really
there's
easy.
no excuse for me not to have
well,
seen
no,
them.
they were released. They were
I know,
released
they were
later.
later,
So
yeah.
it's like, but at least for those listening, if you want to catch up on them, it's going to be really easy. Whereas mine, some of them you're still not going to be able to see yet.
Yeah.
So
that's the two I wanted to add to your list as well, of ones that we just have not caught up with. So given that, now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about our top 5. How about let's do this, Chris? Let's count from 5 up to 1.
Sounds good.
And let's go ping pong back and forth. So,
Okay.
Chris, why don't you tell me your number 5 film of 2021?
So my number 5 film of 2021, we reviewed here on the show. We actually showed it as one of our Foot Candle screenings here in Hickory, North Carolina. It is 9 Days, which I wrote on Letterboxd. It was kind of my take on it. Was there was a live action Soul for adults, that Pixar movie Soul. There's a sequence there's several sequences in the film that I thought were just really imaginative, and one that I called out, I think are in our review, was a bike ride experience. And that was just like a really cinematic moment from 2021 that I look back on. I'm just like, yeah, that it's stuck with me. And that's, top 5. It's like, yeah, there are tons of good movies, but to narrow the list down to 5, it's like, okay, what about the movie has stuck with me? And just, and this also is my, the director, this was his first like feature film debut. The director's Edson Oda. So I'm really excited about what may come next from this person, because you're like, that's awesome that their first film out of the gate, granted, done some short films, but like, was this good? So Winston Duke is kind of the central character in here. And for me to get to see him, he was in Black Panther, he was in Us, but he's a central character in this film. And it was really good to see him get to, spread his wings and really do some work. There's a monologue that he has towards the end of the film where he really shows his stuff. So my number 5, 9 Days. And I think now it's pretty widely available. I think you can rent it in stuff places if you want to check it out.
Good choice. Number 5 for Chris is 9 Days. All right. My number 5 film of 2021 is Cyrano. It's not one that we have reviewed on the show yet, I don't believe. Did we review it?
We have not, and I think the release...
Yeah, it's still... Is it a 2020... I mean...
these things are so irritating.
It's eligible for 2021 consideration.
Absolutely.
So
and
that's
I
what
think
I'm saying.
it hit festivals, but I don't know if it was released...
Wide release, I think, comes out late January.
I believe you're right.
So the good news is that, it is a 2021 film, but people won't be able to have a chance to see it until after even they've heard this show, so which is good. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, Cyrano is my number 5 film of last year, which you will get to experience here in this year. I know it gets really confusing.
Well, and
that.
side note, I think the confusion is there every year.
Yeah.
But I feel like release schedules and pandemic only made this worse.
It's definitely made it challenging. Regardless, I'll say Cyrano. It is a telling of the Cyrano de Bergerac story, directed by Joe Wright. You may know Joe Wright from Pride and Prejudice, Atonement. It was something else he did. What did he do? I already forgot. Okay.
Well, the Pride and Prejudice,
that's the two big
Atonement
ones.
are the two big ones you can forget, because I would The Woman in the Window, which came out on Netflix,
and that
with
was
Amy Adams.
That's what's really funny is that was the last film he did before this one, which we watched. And I mean, granted, I thought it had a kind of a schlocky. I didn't hate it as much as everybody online did. I thought there was something to it, but it was definitely not what I would have expected from him as a director.
Agreed.
Cyrano stars Peter Dinklage as Cyrano. And what I love about this film, well, there's several things I loved about it. One, his performance. He is really good in this. Mm-hmm. And they take the Cyrano de Bergerac story, which the original story is, I think, that Cyrano had a really large nose, and that was kind of implied that was the reason why he couldn't find true love, because people found him hideous. Well, they flipped it and said, let's Peter Dinklage playing a person of miniature stature. And that's going to be what we're going to kind of hone in on. That's why he thinks people could not love him. And he has to excel and be a bigger figure in the world of writing and theater and all because of that. And then you have Haley Bennett as Roxanne, kind of the attention of his love. It's very much the story. I mean, probably most people are most familiar with the story from the Steve Martin version of it, Roxanne. But I thought this was a great telling of the story. It is a musical, which we had quite a lot of musicals in 2021. The music is written by members of the band The National. And you have both some original songs and some kind of reworked songs from, I think, the original stage play or original production of Cyrano. All worked together. It just worked for me. It just all top to bottom worked for me. Kelvin Harrison Jr. as Christian, the one that Cyrano basically does the writing and speaking for, and him trying to win over Roxanne. There are 2 or 3 sequences in this film that I think are just wonderful. One in particular, I think, Chris, you and I even spoke about preparing for a battle that's going to be a suicide mission for soldiers and writing letters back to their loved ones at home. So well done. And, it's a powerful story, and it's played with fun at times. It gets very, very deep and serious others. And I liked everything about it. So I had a really good time. Ben Mendelsohn is in it. Kind of playing the quote villain of the film, I guess.
So good.
Yeah. So all top to bottom, I loved all the performances in this. And so that is my number 5 film of the year.
Cyrano did not make my top 5, but it did fall in my top 10. And I think it is probably my favorite musical in a year that was packed.
Yeah.
Musicals 2021. I think it was my favorite.
Yeah.
So
No, it's just really good. It's one I have revisited. It is one I just find it just charming and enjoyable top to bottom. So plus, man, Peter Dinklage, he can do some sword fighting. I mean, there was some great little sword fights that he got to be a part of. So I enjoyed that. All right, Chris, what's your number 4 film of the year?
So my number 4 is a film that I believe we will probably see some Oscar love for, I hope. It won the North Carolina Film Critics Award for Best Animated Feature, which I was happy to see. It is The Mitchells versus the Machines. I believe I recommended this on the podcast a while back when it came out to Netflix. It's from the people that made the Lego movie. Some of the people that did the work on that have done this. And I really liked it. It's weird for me, I think, for an animated movie to make my top 5, but maybe it's not. But this one at number 4 just seems to be a good place for it. I think it had a lot to say about family. There's some stuff it says about technology, but it never got too preachy, and it was always fun. And it has a gag that is in it, and it runs throughout the movie, and it's one of my favorite, I guess, like funny things in 2021. And it's just, I'll leave it. Doesn't make any sense, but watch the movie and it will. Dog, pig, loaf of bread. That's all I'll say. Watch the movie and you'll understand that.
Okay. Mitchell versus the Machines.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. A CGI animated film on Chris Fry's top 5 of the year. Wow. I can't remember that happening.
And
in the past, well, there may have been a Pixar movie that you maybe had in your top list.
And the thing is, like, that's what's so exciting for me is I like Pixar films. I like them. I don't have a problem with them taking home the Oscar most times. But I'm excited because although, like I said, I like Pixar films, but it's exciting for me to see someone else get the kind of attention that a non-Pixar animated film is getting. So, I hope it wins Best Animated Feature. So.
Okay. All right. So then my number 4, it's a tough one to talk about, but it is the film Mass, which we have not talked about in the show yet. But Mass is the story, or tells a story with 4 actors as they meet to discuss the aftermath of a violent tragedy that affected their lives in different ways. We have in this, it's truly, the reason it's so high for me, it's an acting powerhouse. I mean, it is basically 4 characters in a room for 95% of the running time. Jason Isaacs and Martha Plimpton star as one couple. And then you have Ann Dowd and Reed Birney as the other couple. All 4 really, really good. I mean, I do think Jason Isaacs probably is the most surprising to me because he's typically the one you've seen in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies and in the Harry Potter movies. And it's just, he's always playing the kind of the villainous character in these franchises. For him to play a human being that of this nature and with this much emotion behind him, I was really surprised by his performance, how good he was. The rest of them I expected to be good, and they were all very good. It's a tough film to watch. I'll just go ahead and say that. And part of it, I'm not trying to treat it like there's a spoiler because not quite knowing what they're getting together for and the reason they're meeting and what they're going to be talking about is part of the way the movie is written to build up the drama to where we actually get the conversation. So not even describing what they're getting together to talk about. Just know it is around a very tragedy that has taken place, and has a lot to say about coping with things. It has a lot to say about forgiveness and whether or not forgiveness is warranted and when it's warranted, and how someone who's gone through a tragedy can find themselves into a point of accepting and forgiveness of the others around them. It's just a really, really good movie, powerful movie, tough movie. And just like 9 Days you mentioned before, first time writer director on this as well. The director is Fran Kranz, who is an actor. He's done a lot of work as an actor, and as a director, this was the first film he did as a director, and which I think is amazing. So again, and granted, it's not the flashiest film. It's not meant to be a visually stimulating film. It is truly four people in a room talking, but still a director has to know, how to pull the emotions out of their actors, how to get them to all be able to communicate and talk in the way they do, and to do it in a really effective way. It's quite a film experience. So it is my number 4 of the year. That is Mass. And I believe it is, I know it's available online for, I think, purchase, maybe close to rental. So people should have a chance to see it now. But again, it is a tough watch. I'm just going to say that it's, can be very difficult, especially if you yourself have been through any kind of a personal tragedy with members of your family. It could be a tough watch, but it's I think a rewarding at the end of the day. So
yeah, it's a great film. Didn't make my top 5, but it is definitely in my top 10. And like you're saying, it's tough film, but it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Good one to watch.
Okay. Chris, what is your number 3 film of the year?
My number 3 is a film that was originally supposed to come out in 2020. It did not. It did finally come out in 2021. And I thank every negative review that I saw of this film with people's expectations that had been dashed, because I think it helped me enjoy it that much more. It is The French Dispatch by one Wes Anderson. I really liked it. I knew going in that it was going to be a bunch of different stories woven together. And I think, and some of them, I liked all of them. Some of them I liked more than others, but I think having that knowledge going in helped me kind of, if you sat there and maybe you weren't as interested in one, when it went to the next one, you were pulled up again because your interest re-engaged. But I think there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are like 5 different stories, I believe, or maybe 4. But anyways, each story to me was at least a 3.5 star, but then some became like 4.5 stars or 5 stars. So I liked them all. Jeffrey Wright, his performance in the private dining room of the police commissioner is a little segment that he's in. Gives a really incredible performance that'll probably, I hope, be nominated for Best Supporting Actor because his work in it was really good. It was, I think one of the reasons it makes my number 3 is because it was just kind of reassuring to see a solid film by a great filmmaker. And it was kind of like cinematic comfort food after 2020 and, in the midst of 2021. It was just kind of good to return to something, which sometimes Wes Anderson gets a knock for because people say he makes the same movie over and over again with some of the same cast, which he does use a lot of the same cast. But it was refreshing to kind of return back to that world and just enjoy cinema. And this was one film that I actually did get to make it to the actual movie theater to see, which I think also helped my enjoyment of it. So The French Dispatch is my number 3.
I have watched this film a second time.
Oh, okay.
To try to see what did not work for me the first time.
Okay.
And I still can applaud its creativity. I can still applaud its style and production. I still have a difficult time with the storytelling process on this. It's just so dense and deep, and it's still tough for me.
Okay.
I unfortunately, I have not been able to go in and watch it and not try to follow story elements as closely. And I think if I could, I'd probably enjoy it for just what I'm able to see and experience on screen. But
Got you.
It's a tough watch. It's a tough watch for me, but I'm glad it made your top 5 for sure. My number 3 film is David Lowery's The Green Knight. This was also another one that was, I think, supposed to be released in 2020 and came out in 2021.
Yeah, it got delayed
again. Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
This is the telling of a fantasy retelling of the medieval story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. David Lowery has been kind of hit or miss for me personally. I've liked some of his movies, and others it's been hard to really get into and find as appealing for me. But this one, I'm a big medieval storytelling person anyway, so I was really excited about this. Dev Patel starring as Sir Gawain, I think was really, really great in this. The film just does enough with the story to make it really fascinating to watch. Visually, the film is beautiful. A lot of care and attention being placed on individual shots and moments of things that are foreshadowing what's going to be happening later in the story. And I love the ending, as ambiguous and as maybe I think some people have just gotten into arguments about what that last moment in line reading really is supposed to indicate. But I love that. I love that the fact that it does something interesting with the last 15, 20 minutes of the film, where it kind of caused you to question how it's going to end and what the overall outcome was. I loved it. I thought it was great. Joel Edgerton as the Lord was really surprising for me. He got to play someone with a lot of prosthetic makeup and be a lot older character, and I think he was really great. Alicia Vikander is in this also. Very
Double
very
role
good.
in the
Double
film.
role, yeah. And then Sarita Kachari as the mother of Sir Gawain, also really effective and great. So I loved it. It is, it's a little strange. It's a little different for people who haven't seen it.
Sure.
But if you like medieval stories and you also like some really kind of a creative retelling of those stories, I think that's you'll find something you'll enjoy. And but it is my number 3 film of the year, The Green Knight.
I struggled with The Green Knight. I could appreciate the filmmaking, but for me, it was one of those where it fell into the appreciated as art, but not as entertainment as much. I need to give it a second watch because I think after I know where the film's going, I can maybe appreciate it more. So we'll see. But interesting. Good pick for your third one there.
Well, thank you. Yes. Okay, Chris. So far, we've had no overlap
I know.
in our films.
I'm excited about that.
So I'm anxious to see. I have a gut feeling I know what your number 1 is, but I don't know your number 2. So let's go ahead and roll right into that.
I think we're going to begin to have overlap, but maybe not. So my number 2 is another film by a first-time director, which, hold on a second, let me use Letterboxd and I will find out his name because I, of course, want to give him credit. Yes, it is Michael Sarnowski, and the film is Pig, and it stars Nicolas Cage, and you would think from watching the trailer that it would be like John Wick meets Babe, but it's not. And that's a good thing. It's a great thing, actually. Don't really want to get into a lot of what the movie is, but it does actually have a pig in the movie. I will say that.
Yes, there is a pig.
I liked this film a lot. And I think there again, it has a lot to do with going in with not really knowing what to expect, except I had seen the trailer. And then it's just such a good film, but not all what I thought it was going to be. So it being kind of a cinematic surprise, I guess, helped elevate it to the second slot in my list. And Nicolas Cage, an actor I like, but I never see a film because he's in it. Like I don't just say, oh, well, and he makes so many films, and But man, I thought he did a really good job in this film. And hopefully there again, since we're getting close to Oscar time, I hope he gets some Oscar recognition for it. So that's Pig, my number 2 film of 2021.
Pig, number 2. It will be mentioned later in this discussion.
Okay.
I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm just going to leave it to you where in the discussion it is.
Okay.
But yes, good. That's a good choice. Good choice, Chris. Okay, my number 2 film, we did have overlap. My number 2 film is 9 Days.
Okay.
So I'm also echoing everything you said about 9 Days. I love it. It was one we saw very early in the year. Technically, I think it's officially slated as a 2020 film, but it didn't actually get released until 2021, for people to see, and at least for us to be able to see it. So it is on my 2021 list. Yeah, it's a beautiful film. It's I've seen it 3 times now. Love it every time. Everything you said, I'm not going to belabor the point. 9 days, and we'd also talked about it ad nauseum in one of our reviews earlier in an episode last year. So 9 Days is my number 2 film of 2021. So, Chris, that just leaves our number 1 films. I really thought Pig was your number 1, so I'm very curious. What is your number 1 film of 2021?
And see, this is what's so awesome is we're not going to have any overlap because I know there's no way this is your number 1.
No, yeah. And I know my number 1 is not on your list, so yeah.
Okay, awesome. So my number 1 is a very odd choice,
Okay.
but consider that I have watched this film 5 times.
Wow.
On top of having watched it 5 times from start to finish,
Oh, I know which one this
I
is.
also have listened to the soundtrack
Okay.
nonstop.
Yeah.
It is Bo Burnham's Inside. I just, and granted, you would say, well, that's a stand-up special. Well, not really. I mean, yes, he is a stand-up comedian, but it is just him performing in front of a camera to no one. And just what it said about kind of the situation we've been living in for the past 2 years, the pandemic, being isolated, trying to be creative, struggling with anxiety and depression. I just, years from now, if somebody asked me, what was it like living through the pandemic? If this is still available on Netflix, I'll be like, here you go. And just kind of put that on and let them watch it. Because it blew my mind. I think what helps there, again, we talked about expectations. I didn't know what I was getting into watching this, and I was so blown away. So not for everyone, but for me, it's just the most memorable thing about 2021 cinematic wise was what Bo Burnham was able to do with lights and music in a really small one room, like apartment looking place behind his house. So, yeah, my number 1 for the year is Bo Burnham's Inside.
I don't know why that did not come up on my radar when considering this list.
Well, people don't consider it a
Yeah,
film.
and that may be part of it, but you're right. I mean, there's no reason for it not to be on there. For some reason, it just didn't even hit me that is a film that was released in 2021. It would not have made my top 5, but I'm going to go ahead and add it because we haven't got to our honorable mentions yet. I'm going to add it to my honorable mention because it absolutely is everything you said. It is a great, great piece of work to appreciate. So it is one of my honorable mentions now. Thank you for reminding me of that.
I'm looking forward to hearing what is your number 1, Alan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised it's there as well, but it's just if I look at the film that I enjoyed the most, found myself watching again pretty quickly afterwards, and I think I even said in our review of this film that it's almost like the writer director just said, "Oh, what does Alan Jackson like in a movie?
Talking animals?
No, this one doesn't have any talking animals, but that would have been the best of the decade on my top of my list.
Okay.
No, it's just it from the style, the time period, the architecture, the all the production design involved. Plus, it's a noir type story with some elements of
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
surprised.
Nightmare Alley by Guillermo del Toro. I loved it. I thought it was top to bottom, just wildly entertaining, beautiful to look at, had the right tone I was looking for. I love the fact that the film is meant to make you believe it's going to be a supernatural story, and it's not.
Sure.
It's really about the evolution of a man that's, finds himself, the whole question, is he man or is he monster? And I think this film helps explore, well, what is Bradley Cooper's character in the story? I just thought it's a beautiful film. I love every moment of it, every element. It does make a change halfway through the film in setting and placement and cast. And at first I was a little misgiving of that. I love the carnival, the whole carnival setting and carnival cast of characters we have in the first half.
Gotcha.
And you kind of lose a little bit of that in the second half. I did kind of give a little bit of criticism towards that, but I love the second half as the film as well, even though it's like a different story almost. Together it works. I just really, really enjoyed this film. And I think I honestly think they did a horrible job marketing this film. And I think that's part of the reason why it did, well, they did a horrible job of the release of it, putting it up on the same weekend as Spider-Man coming out with a marketing campaign that I don't think really worked for the film. It just, it bombed really, really bad.
Sure.
But I'm saying how much I love this film. So, Nightmare Alley is my number one film of the year. I'm just as surprised as you are because looking back and just kind of rating everything, I'm like, no, that's the one that still creeps up there for me.
We reviewed it on the show, and I didn't realize you were as high on it as apparently
I think it's more in recollection, just kind of going back and looking at it. I will say this. I don't think there's been that many films in 2021 where I was just bowled over in love with as much either. I mean, even I look at my top 5 and yes, 9 Days, I am in love with that film. That is a beautiful film. The Green Knight, I really, really like. Mass and Cyrano, I greatly appreciate, and they are 2 of my 5 favorite films of the year. But, I didn't really have any of the films that just are making my top films of like the decade or of all time or anything.
Got you.
Nightmare Alley, though, I think just checks enough boxes for me to say I just had such a good time with it. And I love the world they created in this film and all the characters in it. So I'll be happy to, I know there's not really an opportunity to revisit it. There definitely won't be, but I would be totally happy if we could. So that's Nightmare Alley for me. So we only had one overlap, and that was 9 Days. That's the only film that showed up on both our lists. It's pretty good. So we basically have a combined list of 9 films that we've kind of come up with as our best of the year.
Not too shabby.
Not too bad at all. Now, honorable mentions.
Sure.
Can I just hit a couple of these? I did something
Absolutely.
very intentional also with my top 5 list, Chris.
Okay.
If you'll notice, on the top 5, and it's the same for you, there are no franchise movies
Oh, well, yeah.
on that list.
Right.
Okay. Nothing that's yelling out for a sequel, nothing that's part of a expanded universe.
I mean, like we said, Matrix Resurrections, had they, it might have ended up in a top 5. But
Well, I do like the fact that was the case of both our top 5 lists, is that these are all very original films. Either they're adaptations or original written work.
Sure.
And which is great. I will say that my honorable mentions, I've got 2 franchise films in there because I do feel like I am going to put honorable mention Matrix Resurrections because I did really enjoy the film and think it's one of the better films we had this year for sure. And I got to put in there Dune as a honorable mention. People can criticize it for being half a film, which is true. It is half a film. But I liked enough of what was happening there. I'm looking forward to exploring this world with the second installment. So I'm giving it an honorable mention. Those 2 being in my franchise type films I want to recognize. And the third one I'll put in, the last one, honorable mention is I did really like Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho. I know it didn't work for everybody, but I kind of like Nightmare Alley. I liked the time and place that Edgar Wright worked with and created. And I liked that world enough that I enjoyed spending time there. It did have some issues, and the ending may or may not work for everybody in watching the film, but it's enough of an honorable mention for me for the year. So those 3 I wanted to throw out, along with Bo Burnham's Inside, as you mentioned. Do you have any honorable mentions?
Last Night in Soho, I'm surprised it's not in my honorable mentions. I liked it.
Yeah.
But I'll just briefly run through. I've already mentioned, because when you mentioned them, you called out Mass and Cyrano. Those would definitely be in my honorable mentions. They're in my top 10 of the year. I'll mention 3 that have not come up that kind of round out my top 10. And those are The Last Duel by Ridley Scott. I think it is the preferable Ridley Scott joint that came out this year. Not that I had a fun time with House of Gucci, but I think Last Duel is much better. Both starring Adam Driver. The Power of the Dog.
Yeah. I'm surprised that didn't show up on either of our top 5 lists as much love as it's getting
From Critics Associations. And I think if I were to revisit Power of the Dog, that may help it bump up a little bit. But so it's definitely an honorable mention. It's good. We discussed it here on the show. There's a lot good to say about it. And then the last honorable mention I'll have is Drive My Car.
Okay.
Which I think if I were to give it a revisit, I'd probably appreciate it more. But that's going to be tough because the film's like 3 hours long.
It's a long film.
But
very long film.
I like it, and I'd be surprised if it didn't at least get nominated for Best Foreign Language Film.
Okay. So that's our honorable mentions for 2021. Now, Chris, let's go on to our final 2 categories for 2021. This is just one film each. Let's talk first about let's get negative a little bit. I mean, there had to be. We don't like pointing out worst films of the year. I think that's kind of just not a really good practice for us in general. But there are some films that come up that are disappointments. Not saying that they're necessarily always bad films.
Sure.
Just disappointments, much lower or less than we wanted it to be, and we were let down by. So, Chris, what was your biggest disappointment of 2021?
So, like you're saying, not that I'm saying this is a bad film because I don't believe it is, but it was my biggest disappointment of 2021. That is Licorice Pizza by Paul Thomas Anderson.
Okay.
I could appreciate the first-time actors of Cooper Hoffman and Alana Haim. I thought they were good. The filmmaking that's on display, there's some really good filmmaking. There's some interesting cameos by Bradley Cooper and by Sean Penn. But just overall, the story and the lightness of it just kind of left me wanting more, and not in a good way. So I'd say that's my biggest disappointment, Licorice Pizza.
Interesting. Okay. Well, my disappointment, I think I was pretty harsh on this film when we reviewed it.
Uh-oh.
And it's weird for me to even say that this is a disappointment because it's not like I went into this film expecting greatness. But I think with the director, with what they were trying to do with this franchise.
I think I know where you're going.
Yeah, Halloween Kills.
Oh, okay.
Well, where did you think I was going to go?
Well, I thought maybe you were going to slam, which I had thought about doing this, but I was like, no, too easy target. Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, no, it's not quite my biggest disappointment. I did have a lot of issues with that film, but Halloween Kills is the one where it's David Gordon Green, who I know is a good director and can make some good films. And I was okay with what he did with his original Halloween from a few years ago.
Sure.
So I was kind of looking forward to these two sequels that were going to be coming out because I thought, okay, I hope they kind of play with the format. They try to do something different. And they did. It was just so, I felt, poorly handled in the storytelling. Where it's just, I don't want to get into it again. So many just lapses of what I thought made any viable sense for what this story was trying to do. It was frustrating for me. It was very disappointing. I found myself kind of scratching my head at some decisions that were made and the way they characterize people in this. I know they were trying to explore this whole idea of, maybe it needs to be a community of people that are hunting him down and have their own issues. And we start to see how that actually makes the community, even themselves, monsters. I'm like, okay, I get the theme they're going for.
Sure.
It was just so, I felt like poorly handled. And I just walked away very, very distraught and disappointed by it. So I'm not looking forward to the third one, which is a shame because I do like David Gordon Green.
That'll
be
Halloween Ends.
Ends, maybe. So we'll see. That was my biggest disappointment walking away. Yeah, I'd say Spider-Man No Way Home's probably next. There are moments of that movie I liked towards the end, but I do think writing-wise, it was just a really sloppily written film that tried to do way too much and didn't give any one aspect of the film enough room to breathe. And just, I was disappointed a bit, but Halloween Kills is probably my bigger disappointment, mainly because I wanted more out of David Gordon Green from that film.
Fair enough.
So, now let's flip it and go back positive again, if we can. What was our biggest surprise of the year? And it doesn't have to be a film that we necessarily put in our top 5 or whatever, just a surprise, a film that really did more for us than we expected or could have possibly expected going into it. Chris, what have you got for biggest surprise?
So easily for me, it is West Side Story. Okay. And the reason is we returned to cinemas. I saw this preview over and over and over again. And my wife even commented to me, she's like, the first time I saw the trailer, I was interested. I am so sick of hearing about West Side Story. She's like, I don't want to see that movie. But we did end up seeing it. And it was a nice surprise because it was material that both of us were familiar with. But he just did, Spielberg, hey, newsflash, he's a good director. Mm-hmm. And he just employed his skills to the max, and it made it for an entertaining watch. It also was fun to see some talent that I wasn't familiar with. Ariana DeBose as Anita, Rachel Ziegler as Maria, Mike Feist as Riff. All three of those just gave really good performances. Ansel Elgort, as the lead there, maybe not as inspiring as Tony, but it didn't matter because there was so much other star power going on, and it was It was a surprise. So not my favorite musical, but of the year. But hey, it was still really good, and I was surprised that it was as solid as it was. So West Side Story.
Okay, good. I will say too. I mean, I think I gave a mini review of it on the show here. I liked it. I mean, I thought it was well done. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of the story and the source material, but I think given what that is, I think Spielberg did a wonderful job with it. And I overall I'm with you. I thought it was a fun experience in the film in the theater this year. All right, well, my biggest surprise. You already mentioned it as your number 2 film, and I would have mentioned it as an honorable mention, but I wanted to save it for this category. It is Pig, the Nicolas Cage film. That is one I honestly went into based on all the marketing I saw or people talking about, thought, okay, it's just going to be Nicolas Cage fighting through people to get a beloved pig back. And I'm like, all right, I'm just not sure if that's really going to be up my alley. And plus Nicolas Cage these days, I mean,
yeah, he can be hit or miss.
It's just kind of, you really have to roll the dice with what kind of performance or film quality you're going to get. It being a first-time director, all kind of the movie poster and all that, just everything, nothing worked for me. So I'm like, fine, I'll watch this film, and came out really, really liking it.
Cool.
Mainly for the reasons you explained, but I think that they take the premise and do some really interesting things with it. It is not what you expect.
True.
The fact that this film actually becomes a indictment of a particular industry that you would not expect just kind of reading the description of the film and thinking it's going to get into.
Right.
I will say this, I'm trying to do this without spoiling too much, because I think the less you know about the film, the better going in. There is a scene, Nicolas Cage and a former colleague of his sitting at a table having a discussion about that colleague's path in life and decisions he's made, that I thought was really, really good. It was
definitely an Oscar clip moment. Yes.
Such a good scene.
Yeah.
And then there's a final dining meal scene that is also really good. So it's a surprising movie.
Yeah.
Is there a scene of Nicolas Cage getting beat up by some people in an underground fight club? Yeah, sure there is. So if you want that, it's there.
Right.
But there's so much more to this movie outside of that. And I just really, really enjoyed it. So Pig is my biggest surprise. It would have been an honorable mention, not quite top 5 for me, but would have been my honorable mention, but I wanted to save it for this category. So
awesome.
Yeah. So that is 2021, guys. That was the year looking back.
Now, we mentioned that we were thinking about looking forward briefly in a most anticipated film of 2022.
Yeah.
Alan, I have one. Do you?
By the time you tell me yours, I might have mine.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm trying to even think through. I don't have a good list in front of me of all the films coming out in 2022, so I hadn't really. But go ahead. Yes, Chris, what are you the most excited about for 2022 or looking forward to?
So you may remember, I think it was 2016, 17, can't remember exactly, but there was a film starring, what is his name? Harry Potter boy. Can't remember. Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh, yeah.
Harry Potter boy. Called Swiss Army Man, about a corpse that farted. Yes, that's what the movie was about, in a way. Also starring Paul Dano, and it was by a filmmaking team who identified themselves as Daniels, because it's Daniel Scheinert and Daniel Kwan. I really liked that movie's originality and just how bizarre it was, but also how it really had something to say and got me a little dusty, teary-eyed at some points in the film. Well, they are making another film, and I think they've worked together since then, but this is the first big collaboration, big film they're doing. It's called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. It's going to be released by A24, and it is starring Michelle Yeoh as apparently somewhat of a time-traveling multiverse person grappling with that. Not really sure. There has been a trailer that has been released, and I have not seen it, and I do not plan on seeing it. But I heard, that's how I learned about this movie, is I saw this buzz on Twitter about this new movie by Daniels starring Michelle Yeoh, and people were just going crazy about it. And I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. I don't want to watch the trailer. And if I don't see it in a movie theater, maybe I won't see the trailer until the movie comes out. But I am really, 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 really looking forward to Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. To be, I think, coming out in March if schedules hold correctly, which who knows if they will. But looking forward to that one.
Okay. So, yeah. All right. That sounds really interesting. I do have some films I will say that I'm the most looking forward to. I couldn't really narrow it
You
down.
have
to
more
one.
than one. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to hit these real quick. But of the three, which one am I the most excited for? Well, two of the three are purely just going franchise favorites, things I'm looking forward to. So I am looking forward to Matt Reeves' The Batman coming out in March.
Oh, sure.
That just has the potential to be really, really interesting. And
Sure.
I like the marketing they've done for the film so far. The tone,
Where do you fall
the
down
style.
on the whole Riddler costume, Alan? Are you pro
Well,
Riddler costume or anti Riddler costume? You haven't seen it.
What I've seen, I haven't seen the latest trailer. I've refused to watch new
I have not
trailers.
seen
for
the latest
things.
trailer, but I've seen apparently a screen grab or something.
really?
Or maybe a promotional photo
Oh, I
that they did
haven't
of the
seen.
costume. Caused all sorts of buzz there again on Twitter. I think it's good, but some don't.
I like the tone they're taking with the film
Okay.
overall. It has a very noir film. It has a tone to it so far from what I've seen. Again, it's all just been snippets and trailers at this point. But I'm interested to see what happens with that film because I'm a fan of the character and I would like to see what they do with it after we had the trilogy from Nolan, several years ago. This being kind of the next reboot of that. Plus anything to get the Ben Affleck Batman out of my taste out of my mouth, I'm fine with as well. And then also, you're going to roll your eyes on this. And I know this is a real film. It is actually coming out, even though
it
it was
the
supposed to
Godzilla-
come
is
out.
it a Godzilla
No,
film?
no.
No, okay.
It was supposed to come out like 2 years ago, and it's finally coming out. It's Top Gun Maverick.
Oh.
Yeah. See, there's the eye roll. That's what I was looking for. I'm interested. I'm
I will say
excited.
right now, that will be my biggest surprise of 2022 if I actually like Maverick.
Could be. I'm just saying. I think the fact that there's so much mystique around the film now that it's just like, even to the point where some of the actors have had to go online and be like, "No, we promise, we did make this movie.
does actually exist.
We did film this. It's supposed to come out, I think, in May now. So
Oh, boy.
we'll see. Outside of that, okay, if I want to put aside the big tent pole things, the one I will say, we actually showed the trailer of it, I think, in our last episode.
Okay.
It is The Northman.
Oh, okay.
That is the one that's probably the more I've just read and thought about it and thought about the director and thought about what I saw in the trailer, I'm the most probably excited about. I was going to pull it up here real quick.
That's Robert Eggers.
Robert Eggers, starring Alexander Skarsgård, Anna Taylor-Joy. It is a kind of historical action drama, but yet looks like it has a lot more going on in it as well. That's probably the one I'm truly the most excited about, just from a true, like, I want to see a good film.
Gotcha.
Anxious to see, because even though The Lighthouse didn't work for me, I can admire it because I thought it was creative and
Sure.
really, really well produced. I just, the story and following it I just wasn't able to do it. But I really loved The Witch. I thought that was a great movie. So I'm excited to see where he goes with something that seems to have more action and adventure to it, but yet I want it to be also very strange and different. And I think it may pull that off. So
Sure.
So that's The Northman, is probably truly my most anticipated film now. So
Cool.
all right, Chris. Well, we're about done. That wraps up 2021. But let's real quickly, do we have any recommendations we want to
Sure.
make for the audience on things? You go ahead, because honestly, I don't know if I've got one for this
Okay,
episode.
fair
I think I'm tapped out on films
We have mentioned a
that
lot.
I've watched in the last few weeks. I don't know if I have anything new to recommend. So let's at least give them one recommendation if you've got something to share.
Sure. So I'm going to recommend a film that a lot of people would consider for, it's a 2020 film, but it came out, I guess, in 2021. I caught up with it on Hulu, but it is The Killing of Two Lovers by director Robert Machowan. Not really sure how you say his last name, but it tells a story of a family, and David desperately tries to keep his family of 6 together during a separation with his wife. They both agree to see other people, but David struggles to grapple with his wife's new relationship. The director of this was a director of God Bless the Child, which we showed at the Foot Candle Film Festival a couple of years back. And I hadn't really kept up with the director's work since then. But this film I thought was really strong. God Bless the Child was more of a observational type film. Didn't have a strong story or plot necessarily, but it was still really interesting what he did following some children around. This film definitely has a story arc. And the acting, especially from the guy who plays David Clayne Crawford, was really strong. The sound design and the score of this film are very jarring and unsettling and really help move the film along. And I don't think something as noticeable to me since, like, let's go back to like what Hans Zimmer did with The Dark Knight, or because how that movie just set you on edge, the whole time with the Joker and everything. It really it was kind of like a supporting character. Same type thing with this, which is impressive for me for such a small film. But film again is Killing of Two Lovers. It's on Hulu, so if you have that, you can see it for free. But that's my recommendation.
I'm glad you brought this up when you did, because until you told me about it a couple days ago, I didn't even know it existed. And I was a big fan of God Bless the Child, a film we showed at our festival a few years ago. So yeah, very excited to see a kind of a bigger budget and more dramatic, acting involved instead of more of the documentary style kind of just fly on the wall narrative that we had before. So I'm excited to see this film now. So thanks for the recommendation. Sure. And I'm sorry I don't have one. I just honestly, I have not seen anything outside of what we've talked about in the last few weeks. And,
Fair enough.
Can't quite go through my library to see what I would recommend from the past that I haven't already. So give me a couple more weeks. I'm sure I'll have a good recommendation for us next time as well.
There you go.
All right. Well, Chris, that wraps it up. We are officially done with 2021. We've got a lot of great movies come out in 2022 that we'll be discussing over the course of the year. If anybody has any feedback on our top fives or anything, or even our review of The Matrix earlier in the episode, how can they get a hold of us and share those with us?
You can send us an email to info@footcandle.org. You can also follow us on Twitter @footcandlefilm. Al and I are both on Letterboxd, where we try to track what we're seeing and sometimes leave short reviews. Do us a favor. If you like the show, which we hope you do, give us a star rating or write a review, or share with friends in iTunes to help us reach new listeners. We'd appreciate it. We're also available on iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, and Pocket Cast.
All right.
Last but not least, one more thing.
Oh, yeah.
Foot Candle Film Festival is now accepting submissions for the 2022 festival, which will be held September 21st through the 25th. If you can submit before May 1st, you'll save yourself some cash. The final deadline is June 1st for submissions.
All right. There we go. Lots of ways to connect with us. And of course, looking forward to the festival coming up later this year as well. All right, Chris. Well, with that, I think we're time to wrap this up. Thanks everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed it and look forward to talking to you next time when we release our next episode. Until then, take care.
See you in the ticket line.
Watch films in the company of like-minded people in the dark. Watch films in the underground. We won't let anyone know where you are. The films that don't make it to Carmike at the mall, or ones that were famous when Grandpa would watch films out of the reverence of the heritage of an art. Watch films through the courtesy of Foot Candle Film Society.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.